Today, we're going to dive into a story that honestly feels like it's been ripped straight out of a political thriller. You've got a world-famous queen, a hugely powerful prime minister, and this massive ideological war that really pushed India's democracy right to the edge. But this isn't just some dry history lesson. No, this is a deeply personal story about the real, human cost of standing up to the state. And it all kicks off in a place you would never, ever expect.
So, let's start with our main character, the incredibly glamorous Maharani Gayatri Devi of Jaipur. And we find her in a place nobody could have ever dreamed she'd be, inside one of India's most notorious prisons.
Just listen to that. That's how this internationally famous royal, a woman known for her style and grace, described her new home in 1975. Tihar Jail. I mean, it was a whole other universe compared to the palaces she was used to, and you could just feel the brutal shock in her words.
The contrast is just staggering. I mean, look at this. On one side, you have a life of chiffon saris and playing polo with Jackie Kennedy, and on the other, a single stinking room with an open drain, rats as roommates, and what she called lunatics for neighbors. So you have to ask yourself, how in the world did this happen?
And get this, she was 56 years old. She wasn't just some former queen. She was a sitting member of parliament, arrested and tossed into Tihar jail with absolutely no idea when she'd get out.
Okay, so to understand why a celebrated MP was being treated like a common criminal, we've got to zoom out a little. We need to look past her as a person and see the powerful political movement she was a part of.
The answer wasn't a real crime, not theft or violence or anything like that. Her actual offense was the set of ideas she stood for, a political and economic philosophy that was a direct threat to the government's entire agenda.
She was one of the biggest stars of the Swatantra Party. Now, this party, founded back in 1959, was a huge deal. It was India's first major political party that was all about individual liberty, free markets, and a smaller government. Basically, it was a complete and total challenge to the socialist path the country was heading down. So, look, her arrest wasn't just some petty political squabble. Not at all. It was a flashpoint in a fundamental war of ideas that had been brewing for years. It was a battle between the rights of the individual versus the power of the state.
And this term perfectly sums up what the Swatantra Party was fighting, the permit, license, quota raj. It was their name for this suffocating maze of government controls that basically micromanaged the entire economy. For instance, you didn't just need a license to start a factory, you needed government permission to decide how much stuff you were even allowed to make. They argued it was crushing businesses, fueling corruption, and ultimately keeping India poor.
Now, to really get the brains behind the Swatantra Party, you have to know about its co-founder, Mino Masani. His personal journey is absolutely key to understanding the heart and soul of this movement.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It tracks this incredible 180 he did. He starts out as a young student, totally in awe of the Soviet Union. But then, after decades of seeing how state control actually works in the real world, he completely flips. He ends up becoming one of India's most powerful voices for the very same freedoms he used to argue against. Masani, who was really influenced by Mahatma Gandhi, came to this powerful conclusion. If you give the state control over both politics and the economy, you're not on the road to a perfect society, you're on the road to tyranny. He saw this omnivorous state, as he called it, as the #1 threat to human freedom.
So, this war of ideas between the Swatantra Party and the ruling government, well, it reached its breaking point in the summer of 1975. The government decided it was time to just end the debate by using force.
Yeah, claiming there were threats to national security, the government declared a nationwide emergency. All of a sudden, basic rights were suspended, the news was censored, and thousands of political opponents, activists, and journalists were arrested all over India. Democracy was, for all intents and purposes, put on pause.
And this is how Gayatri Devi gets swept up in it all. She was accused under a law called Kofa-Posa, a really harsh law that was supposed to be for catching smugglers, not for political opponents. The police showed up at her house late one night, and she was taken straight to Tihar. No trial, no release date, nothing.
So, let's get back to Gayatri Devi's personal nightmare inside Tihar jail. You see, the point wasn't just to lock her up. The goal was to break her spirit. And the physical toll was just severe. With the terrible conditions, the constant stress, the bad food, her health just plummeted. She lost 10 kilograms, which is a pretty clear sign of a person completely under siege.
And this is where things get really personal. Even after a government minister saw how sick she was and said she should be released, the Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi, personally stepped in and said no. The message from the very top was crystal clear. There would be no mercy.
Finally, after months of her health getting worse and worse, under this incredible pressure, she broke. She wrote this letter straight to Prime Minister Gandhi. Some have called it groveling. In it, she basically renounces her entire political life, promises she'll quit politics for good, and even pledges her personal support to the very leader who had put her in prison.
And you know what? The letter worked. But the freedom she got back came at a massive cost both for her personally and for the entire cause she had fought for.
So, she was released. But she was also neutralized. The state had won. One of the most charismatic, powerful voices for a different vision for India had been silenced. Forever. She chose her personal freedom over her political one.
Gayatri Devi's story, it's so much more than just a queen in a jail cell. It's a really stark, personal look at a question that never gets old. It forces all of us to ask, what would we be willing to go through for what we believe in? And it's a powerful reminder of the courage it takes to speak out, and the incredibly steep price that dissent can sometimes demand.